Hi everyone, I'm so happy to be here on a Sunday afternoon, early evening. My name is Prerna. People call me RJ Prerna. As soon as I say RJ in front of my name, I feel like doctor. Okay. What is this RJ? Matlab, why is this emergency initial in front of my name? I do the evening show on 98.3 Mirchi. If you do listen to radio, please put up your hands. Love to see. Oh, exciting. Good. Happy in your car or on your phone anymore? Not on our phones anymore, but well, radio in general is a medium जहाँ पे हमें ऐसे लगता है कि हम दुनिया बदलेंगे, ठीक है? कब वो medium has transformed from actually changing things that are difficult in a city to how we're only talking about Bollywood music. Neha Kakkar, woohoo! Any fans of Neha Kakkar? Guys, you can put your hands up. I'm not going to feel embarrassed, or neither should you. Okay? So radio as a medium has always been one of those mediums that are very, very effective. I am happy that because of that, I've gotten this opportunity today to talk about climate change. Climate change के बारे में recently I took this up on air. Why? As to हम सब social media पे इसके बारे में बात करें. It's so cute. What exactly are we doing about it? But there is someone who's doing so much about it, and it's called the Ministry of Mumbai's Magic. Can we please put a quick round of applause for the Ministry of Mumbai's Magic for putting this up and actually taking and doing something about it? Because मैं तो acting ही कर रही हूँ रेडियो पे, but यहाँ पे कुछ लोग हैं जो सच में कुछ करना चाहते हैं. So I'm very, very happy to hear, and a quick round of applause for all of you as well. क्या आए यहाँ पे, but happy days. Before I call upon one very important person who is responsible for this and is leading the entire team, I also want to say, I think ये जो line है, about कितनी गर्मी हो गई है यार. That's a great icebreaker for all the introverts in the city. Nah, you can talk to anyone. कितनी गर्मी हो गई है यार. It's actually an icebreaker for Antarctica also, literally. So, as I mentioned earlier and I'm mentioning again, I'm happy that there is a conversation about heat, about the heat stress the city is facing, about हमें क्या करना चाहिए. आपसे, with each and every one today, you have to keep your eyes and ears as open as possible because आपके solutions ही शहर की मदद करेंगे, आपकी मदद करेंगे in the process of it. So if you're feeling the pressure, you must. Yeah, and I would really take this opportunity to call upon the person who is leading Purpose Client Lab, also is a lead on Ministry of Mumbai's Magic, and she has a victory in her name. It's called Vincent! Can you please put a hand up for Vincent?
Thanks, firstly, a huge round of applause to Prerna, who is calling. I think she just kind of set the mood. I think we can do a lot more better. So can we give her a really proper So, hi everyone. I am so glad that you all made it to this event on a Sunday afternoon. Clearly, you guys are really dedicated to the cause and really dedicated enough to want to do something about it, right? And that's what, as Prerna also spoke a little bit, Ministry of Mumbai's Magic is all about. We are really about dedication, dedicated to making sure that there is conversations on climate change happening in the city which are led by young people. So for those who know us, it's fantastic, but for those who don't know, this is a quick overview that we keep talking about whenever we go to different events on Ministry of Mumbai's Magic. MMM, as we call it internally, is a campaign that's been incubated by Purpose Climate Lab. Purpose Climate Lab, again another new big word, is a lab that works globally on climate change, and it does different kind of activities to promote climate solutions in different parts of the world. So one of the activities that it did was to create this Ministry of Mumbai's Magic. Since 2020, we've been doing some awesome work with young people in the city, where young people have actually led in creating solutions. And we've tackled everything from biodiversity to things around the issues faced by the poly community. And this day, today, we're taking something quite new to even MMM, which is heat stress. All of us have felt heat, all of us have experienced it, but I think as MMM, for the first time, we are actually going to be talking more about it and doing something together. So what's really different in this case is that right now you see around you a lot of young people. So if you can just take a moment, look around you, you'll probably see a person who is young, and this person is going to be responsible for really shifting and changing things that is going to be happening in the city. And we're going to try to do that today as well. I'm not going to go into what we're going to do. I'm going to let Prerna and the rest of the wonderful panel and all the people who are going to be there today to actually display and talk more about it. But I just want to leave you with this one hope that as young people, we can change our city. We must change our city as well. And heat is something that we are all experiencing. No matter which kind of background you are all experiencing some level of heat stress. So let's use this moment, kind of channelize what we have been all thinking about when it comes to heat stress and actually see where we can contribute to mitigating that and so on. So MMM as a community is for young people. So if you know anybody, perhaps it's your friend, perhaps it's somebody you go to college with, so on and so forth, invite them to join MMM. We always end up doing cool things in a very new way on climate in the city. So we will continue to have more of these kind of workshops, more of these cool stuff. There will always be something that will hook you in for sure. So just using this moment, encouraging you all to follow us, to get somebody in your community as well to follow us. And thank you for making time. Really, really appreciate that you guys made it on a Sunday. You guys are the absolute boss.
Sunday's got so much pressure on it, yeah. My God. Like, how dare you? What are you doing with me? If I was Sunday, I'd feel pressurized all the time. Especially Sunday ki sham. Sunday ki sham ke baare mein baat karenge. Thank you so much, Vinci. We really need to know what exactly the Ministry of Mumbai Magic is doing and has been doing since 2020. Before we sort of get into the panel discussion and you can shoot your questions and you can ask things. I genuinely also feel that more than young people, if in case your mother also is very, very concerned about climate change. Yeah? If your father is. If there are other older friends that you have. Genuinely, I feel to start a conversation like this really has got nothing to do with age. Of course, I do understand that after 20 years, unfortunately, old people will not be there. Was that dark? But no, genuinely speaking, I feel that anyone and everyone who is sharing Mumbai's space right now and considers Mumbai to be the best city in the world, what exactly are we doing in order to make it the best? Yeah? So everything that's going to happen today is going to go towards that conclusion. How exactly can we really live in a city where we have a heat action plan, we are distressing and we're just trying to rectify things that we really can rectify in future and genuinely can. And the solutions are going to come from you guys. Do you think you are capable? You are capable. And that's what, it's the magic of Ministry of Mumbai's magic. So before we start the panel discussion, there is a Mentimeter poll, and we want to know your perspective of heat stress. So if you could just use that scanner and answer the question that needs to be answered. Can we also please clap for the scan code? I think in case you don't get really live and alive about this, I don't think we're going to move forth towards getting the best solutions for the heat action plan that we really want for Mumbai. So. Yes. The poll is yet to be started. Yes. Till the time. Yeah.
Everyone is scanned?
Sure. What are some other issues you think are caused due to heat stress? The first one is physical health issues. Fever, stroke, difficulty in commuting to work is the second option. Mental health issues is the third. General loss in productivity. Economic effects like unemployment. Has everyone sort of given in their answers? Yay? Okay. Some late Latif person has sent one answer now. Cute only. Must be me. I don't even know about it. So okay, as far as what we see on the screen here is what are some other issues you think are caused due to heat stress? The first one, physical health issues and general loss of productivity are standing neck to neck, and we've got difficulty in commuting to work, which is also, of course, Mumbai is so cute while commuting to work right now with construction and other things that heat just seems to be like double the effect. Then we've got economic effects like unemployment and the most adorable, mental health issue. We're not even understanding what exactly the heat has on mental health. And I think that's about to change today. So thank you for giving in your answers. The second question that we have is how would you rate the severity of heat stress in Mumbai? Okay. I'm not going to read the options. Not severe at all, just seems to be very... Is it mildly severe, moderately severe, very severe? Okay, so we've got, again, we've got two things neck to neck. There's moderately severe and very severe. The ones who said moderately severe, they are the nice friends in their group who want to be nice to everyone. Nah? Just want to be happy and pleasant and give the right answers to their girlfriends and guy friends. They go, ye karna hai, kar le. No problem. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. Which communities do you think are most vulnerable to heat stress? Is it the daily wage workers? Is it the migrant workers? Is it the working professionals? The minimum wage workers, such as domestic help, people with disabilities, local communities such as the Koli community. So daily wage workers obviously is standing out, and then we've got neck to neck between migrant workers and minimum wage workers. Also local communities such as the Koli community. We've got people with disabilities, and the last in the pyramid is working professionals. The next question. Are there any specific measures you think should be implemented to combat heat stress in Mumbai? Free drinking water, early warning, heat wave alerts on phones, free ORS for hydration, medical clinics catering to heat stress. Free drinking water is standing out, and then we've got early warning, heat wave alerts on phones, medical clinics catering to heat stress, and then free ORS for hydration. Can we go to the next question? Which of the statements do you agree with? I have heard of heat action plans. Maharashtra has a heat action plan. Mumbai has a heat action plan. Mumbai needs its own heat action plan, and heat impacts vulnerable communities more. So Mumbai needs its own heat action plan, and heat impacts vulnerable communities more is neck to neck, and I've heard of heat action plans is coming in second. Mumbai has a heat action plan along with Maharashtra having a heat action plan, which probably is the bubble that's going to get boop, today, but we'll find out. So yes, the next question please. We're done? Yay! But I want another question. I'm demanding like that. Thank you so much for taking a part in this poll. This is also not only is this for you to understand what exactly is about to happen, it's also for us to know where exactly are we standing and what do we know about the heat action plan that exists in Mumbai or doesn't. And with this, I would, as Vincy's already set the context for today. But अगर फिर से reiterate करना है ऐसे तो बता दूं कि हमारी अच्छे से लगी पड़ी है ना? So I cannot explain it in any more words, and I really would take this opportunity to sort of call upon our panelists so that we can sort of dive in slightly more. And then of course the next half, the second half of this whole session is going to be about what exactly are the solutions and suggestions that we need to come up with as far as the heat action plan for the city is concerned. So without any further delay, I would really take this opportunity to call upon the Chair for Center for Climate Change and Sustainability Studies, School of Habitat Studies, for Tata Institute of Social Sciences in Mumbai. इनके बारे में बताऊं तो उनका करीबन 15 साल का वर्क एक्सपीरियंस है in research and consulting. The name is Dr. Kamal Murari. He handled consulting projects related to water, agriculture, development sector. Currently working as assistant professor at the Center for Climate Change and Sustainability Studies in Tata Institute of Social Sciences. His research focuses on understanding the impacts of climate vulnerability and climate change in sectors such as environment, water resources, energy, health and agriculture. इस workshop में बात करने वाले हैं about the current global scenario for India in terms of heat and share knowledge on 15 years of research. Can we please take a huge round, give a huge round of applause to Dr. Kamal Murari. Please, have a seat, sir. इनका mic set कर लेंगे भाई, or should we just switch it on? Check. This is about to get real. So before I start, and I take this opportunity to ask you several questions, Dr. Kamal. सबसे पहले तो मैं ये पूछना चाहती हूँ क्योंकि डॉक्टर कमल है, राइट? आपके कितने रिश्तेदार आज की तारीख में भी आपसे फोन करके पूछते हैं कि सर्दी खांसी के लिए आप मुझे दवाई दे दो?
No, I'm not doctor.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. There's so many people who keep getting confused about the same, right?
So that's what I'm saying. You can remove RJ from your name. I will remove doctor from his name.
We're getting there. Call backs in this. Fantastic. सबसे पहला सवाल, and let's just dive into this. If you had to just explain slightly more about आपने आज तक ये जो 15 साल, and it's a very long process. काफी sleepless रातें रही होंगी, काफी early mornings रहे होंगे. What exactly has this entire journey of 15 years been for you, sir?
Initially, it was quite hectic, and a lot of hard work was there actually. Obviously, there was sleepless nights actually, and you normally sleep in the early morning actually. Behavior that you normally had actually. But now I realize what I've done actually, so I'm quite happy with the 15 years of work actually, because now it is turning into some sort of fruits and getting some sort of results also.
Yeah.
And heat is something, when we talk about heat, I started my PhD with the heat actually 12 years before actually. And that time when people started talking about climate, people were more interested on rainfall, extreme rainfall, impact of cyclones. Heat was not really a concern at the moment. I'm talking about 2012 actually. This is the time I came to my supervisor, and supervisor said, why do you want to study about heat actually? I said, when we think about climate, one thing is very sure, the temperature will suit up actually. And if the temperature will suit up, your day-to-day life will become miserable actually, which we are, I think probably after 10 years we are experiencing at the moment actually. So this was 12 years back I started. And now I think from the research paper, I think this issue has moved to the common public. And in normal journal also that has come that heat is really an issue in India and Pakistan. In fact, you look at what economists have said a day before actually, India and Pakistan will feel the most burnt of the heat actually. So I think that has come to the local public actually. So that's why I will be happy actually. And unfortunately, happy for an unfortunate thing actually. It should not go up actually, but it's moving up. And I'm finding that result is turning up and move to the
Right. It's as you mentioned, it's an irony. You're happy about an unfortunate situation. I understand that. As far as climate change is concerned, what role does it have in the rising temperatures? What exactly is changing? What exactly are we supposed to be scared about?
So I think I'll start with very briefly. I'll start with why we think about temperature. Why temperature is a concern. In the context of the climate, what is happening is actually the Earth is receiving more and more heat. Actually. It's receiving the only source of heat is sun. Actually. But now because of the CO2 and greenhouse gases layers, it is tapping more and more heat. Actually. Temperature is a parameter by which we can make an understanding how much heat Earth has received. A larger proportion of heat which Earth takes is actually stored in oceans. If I give you a number actually, 95% of heat that we receive from sun is technically stored in sea. It doesn't go out actually. And over a period of time, because sea is anyway, ocean is anyway water, so water heats up. So over a period of time, this the heated water will come up actually. So technically, in the context of climate change, it's an energy which is the Earth keeps absorbing, and in the form of temperature, it is reflecting back. And this is what we are seeing currently: high temperature for a particular year. But now, what we can see, I can give you some numbers. If you take global temperature and look at which are the warmest year in 150-year record, all warmest years are last 20 years. That's a clear thing. If someone wants to see, I have a slide I can show you later on actually. But this is the reality. So, and Earth is receiving more and more heat, temperature is shooting up. And then when the overall Earth's temperature will shoot up, definitely your daily temperature will shoot up. And more particularly, this will happen in the summer season. And summer will become more uncomfortable. That's the point.
The next question sir, that I have for you is ये El Niño year है हिंदुस्तान के लिए सबसे पहले तो El Niño year क्या होता है और इससे इकोनॉमी, livelihoods और हेल्थ पे किस प्रकार का असर पड़ता है?
So again, as I said, maximum heat is taken by the ocean, and ocean takes heat, and ocean is a moving water. It doesn't move only horizontal way; it also moves from up to down and down to top actually. We call upwelling and downwelling. So El Niño में क्या होता है जब आपका sea surface temperature बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ जाता है actually, and this is the variability of sea surface temperature in the Pacific region actually. What happens? It blocks the moisture which is coming from the Pacific region towards the monsoonal region, which is India, China, the ASEAN countries actually. It actually blocks it. So impact of El Niño is one, it blocks the the wind which is carrying a lot of moisture actually. So it probably lead to drought in these areas, a severe drought in these areas, which will have a very severe health, economic and livelihood impact. The other thing, what some of my research work is actually indicating, when El Niño happens, it causes the prolongedness of the monsoon onset. So when your monsoon is, you are expecting monsoon will come in 1st of June, but instead of 1st of June, it will come on 10th of June. So you'll have 10 more days actually, because it has blocked the movement of the wind actually. So summer season get extended actually. And not only this, because El Niño is the outcome of extreme high temperature on the sea. The sea surface temperature, the wind will move from the touching sea surface. So it will be hotter wind actually. So it comes with the hotter wind, and then it increases the temperature of many regions. So these are some of the consequences of El Nino in terms of drought and heat actually. Now, drought is very serious because it will lead to the productivity loss. Heat, so far in terms of research, is not found so much serious in terms of economic loss. But if you look at the data and other thing, there is a group which collects the data actually. There is a clear indication that heat is the most killing extreme event. Per event basis, there are many deaths actually because of the heat. I can give you an incident because when I studied and spent a lot of time on this. One of the well-documented heat wave is 2003 heat wave of Europe. I think probably by the time we started thinking about heat wave, there has been a lot of heat wave in the past also. No one has paid attention to it. 2003 was a real year when whole scientific community, media and everyone started paying attention. What was the situation in that case? Overall in Europe, the numbers are that during those period of heat wave, there was 70,000 excess death in Europe. I'm using the term excess that we can discuss later on. And France alone has 14,000 excess. So that was the situation what heat wave is leading actually, and has led actually. That's what we know so far. Russia is, many of us know that we know Russia because of the Russia-Ukraine war. But in the context of the climate, Russia is a country which always says, oh, I'm not worrying about climate, because if the temperature will move up, I'll get more and more region which is under agriculture, all Ural and other region will be under agriculture. I'm quite happy actually with change in the climate actually. But what has happened in 2010 Moscow heat wave, 10,000 excess death was reported in Moscow. And Russia was under so much pressure that they had to ban their wheat production, the wheat export that they are doing. So 30% of the wheat export was banned in 2010. And as a result, global wheat prices has moved up. So these are some of the consequences I'm trying to connect with wheat.
Right. Sir, what elements are needed for a good heat action plan, and what elements are missing in most heat action plans, including the vulnerable communities?
I think in order to answer this question, I'll first ask to the audience actually, because many of you have actually mentioned that I know heat action plan. Can you name any city which has heat action plan in India? Ahmedabad. So Ahmedabad has a strong heat action plan actually. That's the only city in India which has heat action plan actually. And this heat action plan is the Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation, they keeps on developing. They started doing this from 2010 actually. And every year they are revising. Now, what are the contents of the heat action plan? First is basically your what we call urban morphology, the way we live in urban area, and particularly I am not talking about the open spaces area, but think about Dharavi, think about other places. We don't have spaces to stay actually. We don't have the spaces for wind to move actually. The circulation is really an important part when you want to get respite from the heat wave. So one of the key components of the Ahmedabad heat action plan, which is maintained by the Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation, is to make the master plan in such a way that urban morphology should not be impacted. That's the first point. Now you can't touch urban morphology because you know the real estate is a big power actually. You can't easily play with real estate actually. So the other plan which is quite, I feel implementable plan is basically you paint your walls, roofs in such a way that heat is not really absorbed, it is reflected back. So this is what Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation is doing, and the ministry in Gujarat they are doing. They are painting the roofs for low-income houses as well as institutional buildings actually. That's a part of Ahmedabad heat action plan. Third important part of the heat action plan is the do's and don'ts actually, because many of us, we don't know heat is really a concern. I can tell you the reason. In India and probably outside India also, doctors don't know that that is occurring because of the heat actually. They normally give an indication that that may be because of the fever, because of other things, but because of other things. They don't look at the root cause of the fever actually. So that's the irony of the current state actually. It's not a problem in India, it's a problem outside India also. Like Australia is getting very high heat during summer season, particularly the cities like Melbourne, Brisbane, they get very high heat actually. And one of the way they understand is, I'm saying the example from the research paper is actually that the emergency response in terms of ambulance call out has increased during the heat, extreme heat climate. So these are some of the things that heat action plan in Ahmedabad is doing actually. Now coming back to the heat action plan in Mumbai, we have Mumbai climate action plan, which is probably that could be your next question, touching about the heat part actually. Unfortunately, Mumbai climate action plan is a plan so far at the moment actually. It's not an implementable work at the moment. But not looking at the heat as a major issue. They're more focusing on other extreme. Because Mumbai, the severity of sea level rise is a real concern. The rainfall is another concern. Extreme rainfall and flood because of the rainfall is another concern. Now cyclone is becoming another third concern issue. So probably heat, what I think we'll have to discuss, and I think municipal corporation people may know whether they wanted to put this as a part of action in the
I think you have put in lots and lots of insights on so many things that we're probably not aware of, and some things that we probably are, but we've already chosen as ignorance is bliss. So can we please take this opportunity for enlightening us in the past 10 minutes as much as you could. Can we please put our hands up together for Dr. Kamal. Thank you so much for being on this panel. I would take this opportunity to call out on our next panelist. Ms. Debdatta Chakraborty is a PhD scholar. Sir, you can sit. Is that okay? Yeah, you can sit. आप बैठिए आराम से चिल कीजिए पानी लीजिए मिस देवदत्ता चक्रवर्ती के लिए तालियां PhD scholar हैं she's at the Interdisciplinary Program in Climate Studies IIT-Bombay. Her doctoral work focuses on the lived experiences of heat among outdoor workers in Telangana. She's particularly interested in what makes certain population more vulnerable to heat and how vulnerable groups cope with rising temperatures. Her research also engages with the heat governance at the local and state levels, and yeah, like it's a lot of work that you've done. आप कितने साल की हैं? ये संतूर की ऐड क्यों लग रही है? Let's be ageist here and take this opportunity. What do you do when you started with such a hard thing? What are you doing for your night skincare routine? Can you please have a huge round of applause for Debdatta. I'm going to get this right by the end of today evening. सबसे पहला moment, I just want to say that good choice of things that you're doing in life.
Thank you.
It's because of you that we're going to also benefit, right? कभी actor नहीं बनना था, just kidding. No, my first.
Lousy actor.
Sorry.
Would make a very lousy actor.
I don't think so. I think you have the. I've seen it in you.
Okay.
I feel like a casting director right now. But we just get back to climate change. Listen, my first question to you, Debdatta, is आपके research के बारे में मैं पूछूं उससे पहले vulnerabilities को आप किस प्रकार से describe करेंगी in detail, because I don't think हमें एक clear idea agenda है कि vulnerabilities क्या होती हैं, and then of course we dive into your research work.
So recently, as we have seen, like last month, so many people died in Kharghar because of heat waves, and only last week, a pregnant tribal woman in Kharghar succumbed to extreme heat stress and passed away. And so these kind of incidents are kind of jarring reminders that we really need to put in more effort in planning and action to prevent such things from happening. And here is when the notion of vulnerability becomes important, because when we talk about heat, not everyone is equally affected by heat. Some people have the privilege of remaining in air-conditioned spaces throughout the day, and the impact on them is much lesser than on maybe a migrant worker working in a construction site. So in my work also, a thing which I explore is how this certain groups, certain caste, class, gender groups are more exposed to heat and are also less able to cope with heat. So for example, as the professor also mentioned briefly about Dharavi, so like in any city, there are certain localities like informal settlements which are very densely packed, and then they have high residential density and then over cramped kind of residential units where multiple people stay in a cramped space. So such places also are kind of the amount of heat that these spaces trap is quite high, and the level of indoor heat stress, something which is not talked about as much, is very high in such spaces. And and it had also been seen that certain groups of people are exposed to heat in multiple contexts. Suppose a migrant worker who works at a construction site in the morning gets directly exposed to sunlight and heat from the sun, and then when they go back home, they take public transport or they walk home, and then they're exposed to heat in the way. And when they go back home, they're exposed to indoor heat stress. So they do not even find the time to recover from the stress throughout the day, and that leads to kind of different kinds of health impacts that it has. And another issue with workers which they face is also in terms of loss of productivity, or they suffer from fatigue and are not able to work as much during summer season. So if in other seasons they work 8 hours, during summer they are unable to work beyond 6 hours, and that results in a loss of pay as well. So heat not only has kind of health impact, but it cascades down to these kind of economic losses as well.
Right. And the indoor heat stress is something that you just put light on, which I probably didn't even think of. And I understand we're sitting in this air-conditioned space right now that there is insight about this vulnerable group. My next question to you is, what is the heat action plan for Telangana? What are the learnings and opportunities for other geographies? If you could just share your research work.
Yeah. So because you were talking about indoor heat stress, another thing I wanted to mention here is also that in some informal localities also, the ability to cope with heat largely depends on the provision of certain amenities like electricity and water. And there are these informal settlements which are extremely underserviced, and as a result people are also unable to cope properly with rising temperatures. In terms of my work, mostly I focus on the impact of heat on the outdoor workers, particularly focusing my attention on gig workers, like delivery personnel and cab drivers, and also on street vendors. So one thing that I have noticed so far, I began my research only last year, one thing which I have noticed so far is that our urban areas are not catering to the needs of these workers. So one very important, there are certain requirements for you to cope with it. One of that is access to drinking water, then access to proper toilets and access to shades, and our outdoor workers are not getting that. So for example, if a delivery personnel travels for long distances in the sun, in the morning they start working, it's not possible, they commute on their bikes, it's not possible for them to carry a lot of water with them to keep them hydrated throughout the day, but there is also very less provision for getting water on the streets, because there are number of working water ATMs are very low, and then there are no such public taps where they could get water from. So as a result, it gets really difficult for them to cope with rising temperatures. People often they get extremely dehydrated at the end of the day, and such issues are also faced by the cab drivers, for example. So they require shades. They require to park their cars. Otherwise, the cars get extremely heated up when they park it on the streets. And another issue which is faced by the street vendors as well. Like if they could have access to shade, tree shades, or even artificial shades where they could put up their stalls that would shield them from direct sun exposure, but often they do not get access to that. And these are certain issues that really affect them, and particularly in this context, I would like to say that the issues are more like a grave for the women workers, particularly people refrain from drinking water because they do not have access to proper public toilets. So, and I have read about this also, and I have also found in my field that women suffer a lot from UTIs and kidney stones because they do not drink water and they are extremely dehydrated. So in terms of the heat action that is being taken place in Telangana, they have a heat action plan, but often it does not cater to the local needs of the population. They do not have a proper kind of vulnerability assessment that is done at the city level. And also, heat action plan generally they focus on early warning systems. And for early warning systems, you need to alert the populations about the impending heat waves and the consequences it might have. And one thing that is missing is that you need a particular language of communication. So if you send out alerts on WhatsApp or text messages or put up alerts on billboards, people need a certain level of literacy to even understand that. So when I went and spoke to workers working on the streets, they were not aware of a heat wave happening around. So we need better channels of communication to communicate. I've also worked in the rural areas. What they do is they go around in an auto declaring heat wave in the entire locality. So I don't know if such practices is possible at the ward level to alert people. And another very important thing which I feel is which can learn from Telangana is that a mistake which we shouldn't repeat. Telangana is the first state which has come up with a policy recently on cool roofs. So before this, in 2018, they had actually done a pilot study on a low-income settlement on the importance of where they have provided cool roofs to like 25 settlements over there, and in the form of cool roofs, they were providing like white sheets which were covering their asbestos roof, and that was bringing down temperature by 5 degrees at least. So this was a successful venture because it brought down the temperature, but it cost, like the government was bearing the cost, and it took 5,000 rupees for each settlement, like for each residential unit. So later on, it did not gain public acceptance. People, once those sheets wore out, people did not replace them again. So when this time I went, people are not using cool roofs. So even if we have a technology in place, it needs to gain public acceptance. It needs to be suited to the local context. As Professor was also mentioning, maybe painting can be a better option, maybe more cost-effective option as well.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and if I could share another instance from Bhubaneswar. Bhubaneswar did a good job in vulnerability assessment, and that is something I think is extremely important when we are looking at heat action. So what they did was, in terms of heat, another very important factor apart from heat waves is urban heat islands. And there is a need to map urban heat islands. So urban heat island basically means how the urban infrastructure, it traps heat. So if there are certain areas which have very dense built up spaces and concrete structures, those areas trap more heat and are hotter than their surroundings. So what they did was they mapped the land surface temperature for the entire city. After that, they did a mapping of the slums in the entire city, and they overlaid the heat maps with the slum map to find out the heat vulnerable hotspots in the city. And then they went and did ward level analysis of the needs of the people, and also trying to find out which areas have more outdoor workers in the entire ward, and so as to make more targeted interventions towards those areas. So what I feel is that our streets are not there should be certain public amenities like water facilities, like public toilets and shade, which should be available to the outdoor workers to help them cope better with heat. Otherwise, they are unable to work and they are losing out on their daily wage, they are losing out on their productivity. And so if we want to enable people to work in heat, we have to provide these kind of solutions and make the city more inclusive.
Thank you so much. It was a very passionate, talk about work that she's done, and it's not just chatting about it, it's also putting light on things that she genuinely Debdatta believes in. And we can totally see that you're very, very strongly opinionated about that. Can you please have a huge round of applause for Debdatta for taking this up as well and for talking about the vulnerable groups and talking about things that we're not doing right. The next panelist on our today's afternoon is Dr. Parth Sharma, the doctor and founder of Nivarana, is it? Yes? Yeah, great, super. And physician, researcher, writer, passionate about improving health awareness in the community. And also currently doing MD in community medicine. A very, very good afternoon to you, Dr. Parth Sharma. I hope you're having a good afternoon. How are you?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me here. I'm having a great afternoon. It's 44 degrees in Delhi right now. So I think whatever I say will come from a very live experience like from Delhi. Extremely hot here, and both the panelists already shared great amount of information. And thank you for inviting me to this discussion today.
We're quickly going to establish it's Nivarana, it's Nirvana. What exactly? How do we pronounce it?
Yes, it's Nivarana. It's basically from the Hindi word Nivaran, which means solution.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's a South Indian way of saying Nivaran.
Solution is basically our motto today, and we're really, really looking forward to getting lots of objectives, solutions, suggestions, so that we can execute them in future. The first quick question that I have for you is, do give us insights on how heat impacts the vulnerable groups and their health in specific. Of course, we've learned a lot about the vulnerabilities that Debdatta had to speak. We also got to know from Dr. Kamal. What would you add to how does it impact the health of all these vulnerable groups?
So heat illness is a huge spectrum. It starts from something as minor as a heat rash, which is when you are in the heat and you get a sunburn, or something called prickly heat, when basically your pores are blocked, so your skin gets rashes. So it's something as minor as that to something as severe as heat stroke, when your sensorium, your consciousness becomes low. There can be agitation, aggressive behavior, can even become unconscious, can have seizures. Something as serious as that. In the middle, there are various other problems that heat can cause. Mostly after heat rashes, there's something called as muscle cramps. Because of excessive sweating, salt is lost from the body, and that leads to severe painful muscle cramps. And there can also be heat syncope when you sort of fatigue, because what happens in the heat is your vessels, your blood vessels in your foot, both your feet, they dilate, and your blood pools in the feet. So that can also cause swelling of your feet in excessive heat. And because the blood pools there, if you are lying down and you suddenly get you can have a blackout, you can faint. So these are very common things which happen because of they eventually progress to something called as heat exhaustion, where somebody feels extremely fatigued. They don't feel like doing things they were previously doing. They feel extremely tired. There can be a low-grade fever in this, not as high as heat stroke, but this eventually progresses to heat stroke when the body's mechanism to cool down is lost, and it's overridden because of the external high temperatures. And this results in a heat stroke when the temperature of the body can go as high as 105 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's like a very emergent condition where someone should be rushed to the hospital immediately. But these are mostly the physical conditions, and mental health also plays a huge role in high temperatures. So it's also something that could be looked at, not just because of this.
And mental health was actually, when we did the polling as well, it was not counted at all. I mean, we still are sort of understanding what exactly does he do for mental health in the longer run. But like our basics are only not clear, so it's very difficult for us to. Also, we don't consider, we think it's a very elitist sort of a discussion to have. Why are we even discussing about mental health? My next question to you is, what are the interventions that are required urgently on a right now, like let's do it right now basis to mitigate the heat stress effect on health, on everything that we've spoken about so far?
So I come from a preventive medicine specialty. So it makes more sense to address the environment first because that's the root cause. Because again, once we move towards treatment, it's too late, I feel. For us, solutions are too obvious, but we are somewhat not addressing it. Something as basic as planting trees and not cutting trees, not even planting. We are first not cutting trees. Something as basic as that, but when it comes to the healthcare level, adequate hydration, drinking a lot of water in summer, especially cool water. So get over the myth that cold water will always cause a sore throat and avoid cold water. Don't do that. Drink a lot of cold water because it helps in cooling your body down. Also wear loose clothes, don't wear tight clothes because again your sweat goes will be blocked. If you're wearing extremely tight clothes, you won't be able to sweat properly. Also eat well, eat at frequent intervals, don't stay hungry because again hydration is effective when you're not eating properly. Once you eat, you tend to drink along with when you're having food, so again those things matter. Something which is recently evidence is available now that when we have a viral infection, I'm talking about this specifically because there is an outbreak of COVID going on, there is also H3N2 infection, ongoing influenza. Viral infection brings down the body's ability again to control temperature. So people who have had a recent viral infection, they should definitely avoid too much heat exposure, excessive work, high intensity exercise, because again that sort of predisposes one to developing a heat-related illness. So that could be the preventive aspect of it, to avoid getting a heat-related illness.
Whatever you just mentioned is the last question, and this is coming out of utter curiosity, is that everything that you've spoken about over here still seems to be very privileged in senses of do not wear something which is tight, drink lots of water, eat properly. As far as the vulnerable groups are concerned, what is the most urgent thing that Mumbai's health system needs to do to decrease the health stress on the vulnerable groups?
So definitely, when we are making any resting place for any workers, it should have shamiyanas. It not should be just open areas, not even metal beams covering because that also increases temperature. So definitely have coolers for people when construction site where work is going on. Give adequate supply of water. This could be something as simple as a Swiggy guy coming to deliver your food and you asking that person, do you need water? Because previously you also mentioned that people like taxi drivers, Swiggy delivery operators, they don't have access to drinking water when they're traveling. So something as simple as offering water to somebody who's dropping you home in a Uber cab or delivering food to you, I think that is the wrong way.
Everything that you mentioned just makes a lot of sense. We're just hoping that who exactly is supposed to do all of this together? Of course, we collectively as a city, and we're going to get to that part of our discussion as well, where there is going to be a workshop where all of us can provide the solutions and suggestions which are needed in order to do exactly what you've given us as solutions. I want to take this moment to actually really applaud the commendable work that all the three of you are doing. Dr. Parth Sharma, the very important part of not cutting trees first and then building and growing saplings next. I think that's my takeaway. And as a review personality, as a media personality, that's what I really want to talk about as well. I know it's going to be difficult. The IMB ministry is going to be behind my back. I'll be put into jail. I really don't care anymore. No, I'm just saying this is the extreme side of the things, but it's a very important point. So can we please put our hands up together for Dr. Parth for providing us insights that we probably knew that, but we're slightly more aware of and slightly more up and alert about. Can we also please take this opportunity to clap for Ms. Debdatta for giving us such passionate insights about Telangana, about Bhubaneswar, about the women, about the vulnerable groups. Can we please clap for Ms. Debdatta as well? Can we please take the opportunity for 12 years and more of research by Dr. Kamal for providing us such interesting insights about what exactly is happening and why do we not take this seriously? And why should we take this seriously? So thank you so much for being a part of this panel, for enlightening us, for letting us know what exactly is the deal. We are going to be moving into the second part. Sorry? Yeah. We are going to be moving into the second part, but before that, for all the three of them, if you've got any specific questions, you can totally take this platform right now and go for it. लंबी खामोशी सवाल तो बहुत हैं, I'm 100% sure. We're just waiting for that first person. Yeah, there you are, first person. Can you please have a big round of applause for first person? Hi, what's your name?
Hi, my name is Sharon.
Sharon?
Yeah.
Sharon's great. Sharon, whoever you have the question for, and the mic's yours.
Thank you. I think I have a question for Debdatta because I think you spoke about the entire concept of like shades and like shelters for the workers, and this was also something I think a bunch of people that I was previously working with, they were some sort of brainstorming around having these shelters at like regular intervals, and this was something that they were planning to do in a city in Kerala. Now the thing was, this was a discussion that was happening in like a private space with like a bunch of people who wanted to do it on their own. Now, to even build a setup such as that, the capex or like the entire expenditure of like putting that together is completely on these 4 to 5 people who are sitting in a room and doing it together. So what is the way to get the government to like get involved in this project where they could also contribute at least financially? Because even if I do it out of my sheer like passion for like doing something for these communities, at the end of the day I would want some financial assistance from like the government or the state to run this. So is there like and honestly I wouldn't mind anybody else, like sir, you could also like give me an answer or any like headway in this.
So far, the progress on this matter is that Zomato has actually started, has opened some shelters like this, at least had the plan. I don't know how much that has materialized, like shelters for their workers. And also there are some philanthropic organizations who open such shelters to provide for the poor, etc., and the workers. And in Telangana, something which they follow is using, calling the corporates to help through corporate social responsibility. But I'm not sure that's a very good, I do not know whether you can get sustained funding under such a situation because it's mostly corporate philanthropy. So I do feel that recently there was a study conducted by the Center for Policy Research who were looking at the heat wave action plans in different cities and states, and they had this, they pointed this out that the heat wave action plans lack a financing mechanism, and that is a huge problem when we want to take this kind of long-term measures. And I feel if heat becomes an important part of the urban planning itself, maybe through urban development projects we could get some funding, and through those we could create such, as people invest on recreational parks, maybe in certain localities, maybe we could have some centers like that.
I just want to add actually, I think when I started researching on heat wave, and one of the key motivations why I wanted to switch on to heat wave actually, I found 1999 heat wave of Odisha was the most dangerous heat wave, where the most number of deaths were reported in Odisha actually. And what was the concern with the state ministry in Odisha is that the heat wave is not a part of disaster list actually of government of India. That was the time actually around 2012. So what would be the consequence if it is not a part of the disaster list? Because then you will not be able to allocate money to that particular issue actually. So that was the real issue in front of the state of Odisha actually. And then the state of Odisha was pleading to the government union because disaster on disaster money moves from the center to state actually, to the district revenue officer and everything actually. So you have to first declare that as a disaster. That's the first condition actually. Now I think the NDMA, which is the main authority in India, has declared it as a disaster. And now state has to put some money into it. Going to your question actually, there are two elements of the question. One is the state has to budget the money because then state will be able to do something into it. The other is that the firms and the private system, I would say non-governmental system will be able to allocate some money. So I think probably they are doing something because as far as my research is going on, which I did in Telangana and Andhra, particularly in the industrial plants actually. The people there in the industrial unit, it's a big workshop actually, and it's completely made up of asbestos or steel actually, tin. And this it has a high propensity of taking heat actually. So what they do as a part of their action actually, they give some sort of relaxation time to people actually. They provide buttermilk. So they have some internal funding in it. But that won't work actually unless we have the public funding mechanism. So at the moment we have, because it's a part of the disaster list, we have some sort of public funding mechanism. Only we need to know how to allocate it. So I have little, if I say state action plan on climate or state heat action plan, like Telangana state heat action plan, I have my own observations and oppositions with this. Because state heat action plan doesn't work. That's my understanding. Because it's quite broad in nature. State, Telangana state would be broad in nature. I'm quite optimistic to city-based heat action plan, and that's why I said Mumbai heat action plan or Ahmedabad heat action plan, they can work better actually. So that's my take.
I have something.
Sure.
Parth, would actually like to add to the...
Sure. Sorry. After. Yeah.
Yeah, I would just like to add that there's just a comment. The whole heat illness and the mortality, morbidity associated, it's actually if we see that the study of the Lancet, which was about nearly 165 billion hours were lost of productive work because of high temperatures. 55% more people died in India because of heat. So it's not just that we are losing out on we are losing money because we are losing productive hours, and there's also a lot of debt. So if we don't invest in this, we are losing two ways. So we definitely need more political will. It's not very difficult from how I see it. We just need political will to address this issue. And I hope through workshops like this, people get interested in this topic and talk more about it. So ultimately, the people who are responsible can take some action.
Thank you, Sheryl. Thank you, Debdatta. Thank you so much, Dr. Kamal. Thank you, Dr. Parth. We've got another question. Yeah.
I think Sir has talked about how it is important to have a region-specific plans and then narrow it down to even city and state-based action plans. But I just want to have your thoughts on how important is it to have action plans built in different policy narratives. For example, let's say we have labor codes, which is revamped entirely for construction workers, gig workers. Something has been around green hydrogen mission and all. So to cater some of these marginalized sections, is it really important to build those action plans into these policies, which can be more realistic? And because they have certain funding also coming from state and center ministries. What's your take on that? Why? Because I think Debdatta has talked about that. I know that heat is a very holistic phenomenon, but I think access to protection measures is much better for privileged people rather some of these marginalized sections. So how important to build some of these plans into policies so that it can directly tend to these. That is one. And my second thing is with Dr. Parth, I don't know, this might be a very elite concept, but do we need to also see from our own side also that how different dietary patterns can actually combat, to fight against heat from a medical perspective? Because out of sudden I cannot stop global warming, but I think something which I can follow on a personal level, the medical community can start. What are your thoughts on that also? So I think these are two narratives.
We can start with the first part, and any of you, if you would like to answer.
I think if I understood your question correctly, how we can build heat action plan to different policies.
Yeah.
So that's a point. But I'll start with some sort of story. I'm a professor, so I'll come with the story. It's my problem actually. So there's one indicator for heat wave, what you call WBGT. The term is wet bulb group temperature, which is an indicator of temperature, radiation, wind speed, and humidity. These are the four components that we normally take it actually. How WBGT is developed actually. So the whole idea of WBGT was developed by US military actually. Why they develop it? Because they want to send their troops to Iraq, and they want to understand whether their troop will be able to withstand the heat in Iraq or not actually. So that was the kind of the concept of the idea of WBT. Temperature alone will not be really a good indicator. You have to have temperature and relative humidity and wind actually, because circulation plays an important role. So this is what they built when they were actually making the policy. So that's a policy they were moving to Iraq, and they thought about their troops should be able to do it. They did a research and made it. So my take is no policy is, unfortunately, this is the story actually, wherever, no policy is standalone. Unless there is a diet, you have to find out the connectivity actually. So all policy have its own connectivity actually. I mean, if you take heat action plan, which is one policy, but it will have a lot of connectivity with laborers. For example, in the context of labor, we can consider heat as an occupational health safety hazard.
Yeah.
That's an important thing actually, which then connects to the environmental compliance and occupational compliances actually. So these policies have a lot of connectivity. How do we identify a single element of the policy when we have to allocate budget? Otherwise, it would be really difficult, because a complex policy you can't allocate budget actually. But you have to identify the connectivity between policy. So one heat action plan, occupational health safety hazard. So these are the sort of connections. Then maybe policy related to what doctors should do or medical practitioners should do during summer season actually. Like Dr. Parth talked about actually, there, in terms of research, when we talk about research, when in the context of heat, we mostly talk about mortality. There is no research about morbidity actually. Hospital admissions actually, what happens actually. So I think these are sort of connections that I can't give you one-way answer. There is no one-way answer. I think policies need to connect to each other actually, otherwise it won't work. Standalone policy doesn't work.
And I think also, just to add to what Sir just said, I wanted to say that even our National Action Plan for Climate Change also talks about mainstreaming climate action into development plans and policies, and that I think is something which is really necessary to address this. Otherwise, as Sir also rightly mentioned, standalone policy measures such as heat action plans will otherwise not work. And even when we talk about city level, I feel more kind of localized planning at maybe ward levels can help better to deal with vulnerabilities and target specific groups in a particular locality. Maybe those can be helpful.
Can I add one more thing actually? This is one policy what people can think of. During summer season, at least in Mumbai, we don't get blackout and power outages actually. But in other areas, power outages are quite common actually. So when you have very high heat, circulation, fans would be a very important part actually. If you don't have a fan actually, it's really concern actually. If you don't have electricity, you can't run fan actually in that way. So I think one policy, that's a connectivity between policy, that there should not be any power outages during the heat time. That's one way I can connect.
I totally agree with that. We have enough vertical policies in the country which are totally disconnected. We don't need another policy which requires separate funding, because ultimately you don't need a separate center to treat any heat-related illnesses. It can very well be managed. The initial part at least can be managed in a PHC. So ultimately it comes down to health system strengthening. Do we have a refrigerator and a PHC with cold IV fluids? And most of the times I have seen that smaller hospitals have a refrigerator, but they don't have IV fluids stored in them, prepared for the patient who might come in with a heat stroke. So are we prepared ourselves as a health system to tackle this problem? I don't think so. Secondly, talking about research, there is ample research talking about diet and the heat stroke. High fat diet has been linked to increase susceptibility to heat stroke. But definitely we need more research happening in India on our population, because we can't rely on Western data then for our data. Secondly, research in the device side of this, because again, people come in with heat stroke and the refrigerator doesn't have IV saline. So how do we cool IV fluids faster? So there needs to be, because to warm down blood, because when we store blood in coolers, and it has to be at a specific temperature. It has to be brought down to 37 degrees before giving to somebody. We have warmers, which you can just attach to IV line, and it warms the blood and you can transfuse it. Can we have something as a cooler which cools down the flowing fluid before it's going into the body? So again, we need research in that aspect as well, not just the diet. But your question is really relevant, and thank you for that.
Dr. Parth, there was another part of the same question as to what exactly are we supposed to do personally on a personal level as far as our diet is concerned, etc. On a regular basis in order to sort of combat the entire situation that we've been talking about.
See, again, ultimately it comes down to hydration. Heat stroke happens because you are extremely dehydrated, because you're constantly sweating. And if you're not replacing that fluid and the electrolyte, the salt that you're using, if you're not replacing it, then you will suffer from a heat illness. It's as simple as that. So at your personal level, it just comes down to making sure you're in a well-ventilated place, you're not directly under the sun or for the majority of the day, you're well hydrated, you have enough calories for your day, the amount that is required, and you have enough juices, have electrolytes, and again, you are sitting under, like sir mentioned, circulating, there should be a proper ventilation, fan, if possible, air conditioning. So those are the very basic things we can do at our level.
Right. If that answers the question, we can take one more question. Yeah, sure.
I'll be digressing a little bit from the discussion on heat. I wanted to understand across the whole climate spectrum, given that we're talking extensively about urban poor groups and urban vulnerable groups, I wanted to understand within the whole climate change spectrum, are there any more specific areas, like heat is one? What are some of the other areas that are specifically targeting urban groups, that could be having a direct impact on their lives, heat aside? And also because, so I work in sanitation and I've been trying to sort of build discourse on this particular topic, and I've also been finding a little bit trouble in terms of finding evidence linking climate change and urban poor vulnerabilities. So I thought that since we're having this conversation, I want to understand that. Maybe you could help with like city-specific examples in case there are a few, but yeah.
I think it's also very context specific. For example, in Mumbai, urban flooding is flooding and sea level rise. These are very important disasters facing the urban community, but specifically focused on the urban, cannot think of.
Right. So heat and flooding, you would say, is
yes,
like
yes. And
what about like other cities maybe you have to talk about, like your work in Telangana?
Mostly flooding and flooding. These are and with heat also another important issue that happens in particularly in slum areas is fire, outbreaks of fire during summer months, causing problems and having a kind of a cascading impact.
Got it.
Just want to add actually to the question. So let us understand first what is an impact actually, what causes, and that goes back to the original question of how do you define vulnerability. So technically vulnerability is some sort of socio-economic condition that maybe if you are exposed to a kind of event that may produce a risk. That's the meaning of vulnerability. So particularly in this context of urban, people are more vulnerable, more particularly urban poor are more vulnerable. And I'm saying in the context of heat, then we can discuss in the context of flood also. The reason is in the rural area, that's why we don't talk about heat impact in rural area largely actually, but it's also there. In rural area, people have access to shades, people have access to open spaces. Actually. Urban poor, I'm specifically talking about urban poor, not other people in urban area. They don't have access to space. And that's a really, really important concept. And that makes them vulnerable. And that produces a risk. So exposure, vulnerability, and that produces a risk actually. So that's one dimension of with respect to the urban area. And that depends on the geography also. different geography will have a different impact actually. Some geography is very much prone to extreme rainfalls actually. Some geography is very much prone to very high temperature. In fact, there are two aspects of high temperature also. We have a dry area, we have a humid area. Like Mumbai is a humid area. So we'll have a high temperature with high humidity, that will make impact. Delhi and northern area, Nagpur has a completely dry area. The temperature is very high. 45 is a very common day-to-day temperature there. Here in Mumbai, actually 40 degree will make a high probability because of high humidity, and that would be a concern. So all this is very context geography specific. And that is a different understanding also, because if you are in a dry region, your dehydration rate would be very high. So you need to hydrate yourself actually. That's a way of doing it. If you are in a humid area, because the outside humidity, moisture is same as your body humidity, so there is no humidity transfer actually. So your body heats up because there is no cooling mechanism which is happening. So you need more circulation than water. So these are some of the nitty-gritties that one has to think about. That's one aspect actually. This is what I'm simply describing in the context of heat. But yes, flood is really a major concern every year in the context of climate. We are getting flood every year, next year actually. I'm quite a pessimistic in terms of are we going to get 1.5 degree or below. We have already reached 1.3 degree and we have only space of 0.2 degree, which is definitely we are very intelligent. We'll cross it. 2 degree also, we are, I think you look at the United Nations reports and other things, we are going to breach very early. So I'm quite pessimistic in that sense. 2030 is very near. We are not going to achieve this target. That's a pessimistic opinion. However, many people are doing at the moment many things. I'm hopeful that it will culminate in a collective way and do something. But definitely we'll have to be ready for 2 degrees. So heat will be a common phenomenon. Even with 1.5, 2, it would be a disaster phenomenon.
Yes. If I can add something. So like the question was very nice. Heat definitely impacts the body directly, but there are a lot of things which it also does for human health. Now there's this whole concept called One Health, where we talk about human health, environmental health, and animal health. And we are connecting everything to environmental health now. Even something like rabies cases going up, dog bites going up, snake bites going up in India, antimicrobial resistance. All this can be connected with environment and climate change. So definitely it's an alarming issue. I wouldn't call Sir pessimistic, like he's calling himself. I would say it's more realistic, because ultimately if you look at the geopolitics, the global politics, India is not the culprit for climate change in India. It's basically coming from the Western world. It's global north affecting global south, and global south's opinion is not really heard. So there huge amount of global politics and all this. So I think he's being extremely realistic rather than pessimistic. But I'm saying at least good for the change.
Everything that has been spoken about over here by Dr. Kamal, by Debdatta, by you, Dr. Parth, and the kind of questions that we've gotten in this part of, it's just been very interesting. It's been very realistic. It's been, like Dr. Parth said, very realistic, not pessimistic. Not being a cynic at all, it's just being futuristic about what exactly we definitely will fall into. So here what we're going to do is we're going to clap again for our very, very lovely panelists for taking out the time for giving their very valuable insight that they've worked so hard for. It is a shame that you would have to describe everything that you've done in the past 12 years in about half an hour. It's wrong, okay? It's injustice. But here's hoping that this is only going to take this conversation ahead. So thank you so much for being here. We are going to take a tiny break, and all of us are going to put our heads together from everything that has been provided by these 3 very amazing people, so that we can come up with solutions and suggestions. And but before that, we just get hydrated, just like Dr. Parth said, and take a tiny break. But yeah, this is really transforming into something that I think has potential. So, good stuff and best of luck, because the next session and the second part of this is just going to rack your brains and just, you have to have the climate change juices flowing. So, we'll see you again, and thank you so much for being a part of the first part of this gorgeous. Thank you very much. Take a break. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Parth.